is value SaaS, and why do we have to think about, why should we care about value SaaS, and what are things that a value SaaS product manager that he does differently compared to other type of product manager. And if you were to understand product manager through a skill stack, what are unique things about a value SaaS product manager? Those are the 4 things that I want to cover. And if I can infect you guys with this whole idea of building products in the value SaaS way, if you're working in a B2B industry, or if I can infect you to get interested in that, then I think, the next 30 to 40 minutes will be well spent according to me. So let's first just, do some sort of definition and try to understand what is value SaaS. But maybe before that, what I want to do is I want to ask you guys a question. I want to ask you, saying, according to you, what is the number 1 job a PM in an early stage startup does? And the way we'll do this interaction is I want all of you to go to this website called menti.com, MENT.com, and type this code. You see that you will have to type a code, type this code called 355024. So let's use the next 30 to 45 seconds to go to menti.com and answer this question on what do you think is the number 1 job of a PM in an early stage startup? Can we do that? So Has, can you enable screen share for me? We can look at, what are the results that folks here are coming up with.
Sure thing. Rajan, I've given you screen share. You can just check that as well.
Mm-hmm. Anybody facing issues in going to menti.com? In that case, put it on the chat window.
Rajan, they're just asking for the code once again. So in case.
Yeah, the code is 355024. Okay, so I can see some results pouring in. Let me figure out a way to share it. That looks like I have to find some way to move this window and share it. Okay. All right, so here are some results that are surfacing up. Product market fit is the job of an early stage product marketer, product manager. Prioritization, core features, okay, retract features, understand competitors, innovators and vision, product roadmap, okay, conceptualize a product, growth strategy, what could be the MVP, what is the product vision. Oh wow, so a range of different type of answers. So let's see if we can cover some of this in the presentation that I'm going to cover. So I'll come back to it again. Let's stop the screen share. I'm going to continue with my presentation. Yeah, so let's first talk about what is value SaaS. Value SaaS is not vanity SaaS, right? Vanity SaaS is using $6 million to get to about $1 million in revenue, using $600 million to get to $100 million in revenue. Vanity SaaS, I always equate it to Valley SaaS, because Valley is a place where there is a lot of funding that is available, and people use funds without thinking efficiency about the funds, and they're always over investing and trying to figure out the business model and postpone it to a later point in time. And they're saying that, if you just grow, then that should be good enough. They don't think about product market fit. But in a simple way, if I were to help explain, then value SaaS is nothing but the basic equation of a business is working. What is the basic equation of a business? That if you put $1 of investment in it, then you should be able to make more than $1, right? Not in day one, not in first week, not in maybe in the first year, but eventually maybe 2 years, 3 years, or maybe 5 years or 7 years later, you can make this equation work that, you put in $1, you get more than $1. That's the basic business equation. But you will see a lot of businesses, a lot of startups that will invest $1 even after 8 year, 9 year, 10 year, 11 year, they don't make this business equation work. So Value SaaS says, how can you make this work as early as possible in the life cycle of a company? Right? In the context of B2B businesses, you can frame it in a slightly different way as well. What it means is that there is an uncompromising focus on making sure that your unit economics works before you can step the gas pedal on growth. What happens in the world of startup is that valuations are what drive startup, and valuation has a direct correlation with growth. So most of the times, founders therefore end up trading off growth over unit economics. But Value SaaS is a discipline or a way of saying that I won't step on the growth pedal unless I have figured out the unit economics. If I were to put some numbers to it, what it means is that you are able to get to $1 million in revenue without raising too much of capital. You get your SaaS flywheel working. In the world of SaaS, product market fit does not have a lot of meaning. Instead of that, people use this word called, are you be able to build an efficient SaaS flywheel where $1 in is getting you $1.1 out, right? And in more specific terms, if you get to $1 million with less than 200K of any type of external funding, then you can definitely say that you are Value SaaS, right? So these are different ways to look at what a Value SaaS business is. By looking at what it is not, and by looking at, in terms of numbers, in terms of the comparison with usually used definitions such as product market fit. But the question also that one has to ask is why is it that we need to talk about Value SaaS, right? That is because, like, at least post-COVID, it has become extremely clear that, the fad of startups that was reigning supreme for the last couple of years, called as blitz scale, usually leads to blitz fail, right? Scale first has actually led to fail first. Now, what happens in blitz scale is that you are looking at a tide after tide that you're trying to ride, right? You are saying that what is the next big trend that is there in the market? What are the things that are coming up new? And then you're saying that I'm going to leave the old thing and I will jump onto the new thing, and then I will ride the tide of growth. And that's how valuation will be there. That's how startups will get generated. And as Warren Buffett has said, right, it's okay to ride a tide, but don't ride naked. And that is what has happened in the recent past, where a lot of high flying founders have been caught naked, right? They were riding a very high tide, but they had so much leverage that, like, a company which went to about $47 billion in valuation is not even looked at as a $10 billion valuation. Example, WeWork, right? And closer home, a company like Oyo, which again was riding a high tide, but then when tailwinds changed, they came crashing down. Now, what does it mean? Why you have to do it? See, the riding the tide, it works for an investor, because for them, this is 1 out of the 10 bets that they are doing on a WeWork or on an Oyo, right? If that doesn't work, then maybe something else will work. And 1 out of the 10 works, or even 1 out of 100 works, that works for the founders, for the investors. But for the founder and the team that is working in it, for them, this is their one life, this is their one bet. And they want to be winner. They don't want to be a statistic, right? They don't want to be called as, oh, I tried this and I was a potential, right? So founders have to build a Value SaaS startup so that they can make sure that they are the winner, but not a statistic, right? And they are the person who is playing the game, and they are not a chess piece, right? So they are the chess player and they are not the chess piece. And if founders don't create meaningful outcomes, if they don't become winner, then the teams that are working with such founders, they don't get to make any kind of meaningful outcome, whether it is brand equity or whether it is any kind of optionality that they will get when the startups become successful. And that is the most important reason as to why one has to think about businesses in Value SaaS lens as opposed to the vanity SaaS lens. Just to recap, right? So this is something that David Sachs has said this in a post that became very, very popular. He said that, post-COVID, burn multiples are becoming more important than valuation multiple. What it means is if a company can get to $1 million with less than $1 million, then that is a great company that investors are looking at. Earlier, companies could afford to spend more than $2-3 million to get to that $1 million. Now, in this framing, the definition of value SaaS is that if you have a burn multiple of less than 0.5, right, and you still continue your 2x growth, then that is value SaaS. Right? First, you have figured out your burn multiple, and you have figured out your flywheel, and then you're stepping on the. Yeah. I also went ahead to say that why companies Blitz fail is because they don't focus on unit economics. They hide under blended CACs. They don't understand which is the channel that is giving the best customers, and they also don't arrest churn. And this is the big reason when you only focus on growth, you don't focus on unit economics, leads to Blitz fail. So for more meaningful founder outcomes, therefore, employees who are working with founders who are building value SaaS, they have to look at being part of a business which is building in a value SaaS kind of a way. So that was why, what, and then let's now talk about what are some of the things that a product manager in a value SaaS business does differently. So Prasanna is my partner at Upeka. He says that most of us, when we think about product, we think about features, right? We fall in love with, the design, the features that we could build, and how cool it will be. But rather, what you want to do is that you want to fall in love with the problem, not the feature language. Now, I don't know whether there is a left brain and a right brain, but I can certainly say that when it comes to thinking about product, there is a problem brain and then there is a solution brain. And since we've been kids, we've been taught to only think in the solution brain. We've always been asked to understand, answer questions, but never ask questions themselves. Right? So value SaaS product manager is someone who lives in the problem brain. If you talk about a small business product of automating something, automating some process, we will say, hey, here is a feature that will eliminate pen and paper. But if you want to frame it in the problem brain, you would say, are you still old school? Are you still wasting a lot of time in just being in pen and paper? So the framing of every feature has to be done in the problem side of things. Now, a value SaaS product manager is someone who is on a relentless search, right? Relentless search of a high value problem. He's not just looking at any problem. He's looking at saying, what is the high value problem in the context of SaaS? For those founders that are building from India for the rest of the world, they are saying, can I look at a problem that is at least going to be worth $3,000? Now, specifically, if I were to take example and illustrate that, there are nuances to this. Either you are looking at a cost of problem which is very, very high, or you are looking at a small cost of problem, but for some user, the frequency is so high that when you add it up, it becomes a huge cost. Specific examples that I can quote from my experience: Alma-Base and Interview Mocha to Upeka Tribe startups. Alma-Base sells alumni management software to universities and schools. In their case, the cost of problem in aggregate is very, very high. So what they say is that if you don't engage your alumni in the post-social world, where like the communication channels are so diverse, then you miss out on a potential future alumni donor, and that is going to cost you worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So spend at least $10,000 every year to set up a good process to engage with your alumni across multiple channels that exist online. On the other hand, Interview Mocha is about a skill testing solution where anybody who's coming in into a company, you give out a test to evaluate whether they are fit for that particular skill. Now, the same problem can apply for a 3-people startup, but also can apply for a 20,000 member organization as well. For a 3-people startup, this frequency is going to be maybe once a month, maybe once in 3 months. And there, the problem that is being solved is the time that you save in sending out these emails to assess skills. But for an organization where it is 20,000 people, which has about 200 HR managers, for someone in the HR team, it is a daily job. They are literally having to do that day in and day out. So for those people, maybe the same small job, to be done, but it has a higher impact because they, like if a tool is built, they will live inside the tool. So either high frequency, small cost, or high aggregate cost. And using this lens of the cost of the problem, they are looking at what is a high value problem that they can solve, right? So they also put this in the perspective of what within Upeka we call as the B2b hierarchy of needs. If you take any B2B startup, they have different type of needs. And these needs, only when the base needs are met, will you be going into the next level of the need. Like if you start out a B2B company, then you are wanting to make sure that all the regulation is in place. Your professional taxes are paid, your PCI compliance is there, your taxes are paid in time. So if anybody is solving problems in that compliance area, nobody is going to ask questions. They'll just first allocate budget and they will have conversation. It may be like, why should we choose vendor A versus vendor B type of question that they will come back, but that is a base need. On top of that, any B2B company is just trying to make sure that they earn revenue. And only when they have thought about and have solved the needs related to earning revenue, will they be worried about bottom line, which is earning profit. And once they are not worried about their compliance, their revenue, their profit, then they will think about workflows and they'll think about efficiency on how to do it. Right? And if they, and that is where most of the product that get built are anchored around. You create a workflow product for improve your hiring efficiency or your marketing efficiency or your accounting efficiency. But unless startups or B2B companies have solved their needs for improving income, improving profitability, they'll not look at improving productivity. Now, you can take the same product and say that you're helping with improving income, or you can also pitch them as helping to improve workflow. Just to sort of illustrate this with a quick example, there are multiple bigger startups that I can talk about, but for the example, iZoto is a push notification service. When they talk to a publisher in India, they say that, if you send out a push notification, and if I'm able to do it very, very thoughtfully, then I can push out an ad after every 7th push, and that will help you improve income for you. Versus when they are pitching it to a large organization in the US, they are saying, hey, you need to have multi-channel touch point with your customer and engage the customer better so that you can eventually turn them into a subscriber, just like how New York Times did. And there they are talking about at a workflow kind of a level. So where in the hierarchy of need does that problem come also impacts in understanding that high value problem. So other than this, the Value SaaS product manager, when he's using the problem framing, he's also using that to align the entire team. Right? Usually when we think about product, we think about roadmap. In roadmap, we only make a list of features, but that is the engineering lens, right? You say that product has a set of features, but the right way to frame is what is the customer and what is the problem that we are solving. And that conversation with that customer is going to give you that set of problems that you should be focusing on. Now you use that set of problems and then say, for this problem, this is how we are going to solve, and then give that requirement to the engineering team to solve through the engineering way, and also translate into that feature language. But then you are going to use the same problem language and frame it in terms of benefit. And so that's something that you're going to solve in the future, and create a benefits roadmap and share it with sales team. And when you sort of explain this in a very one single tweet sentence type of a way, then you're talking at a vision, right? Vision level. So when you explain your company at a like a single sentence at a vision type of level, there again you want to sort of frame it as a problem, saying we exist to make sure that we elevate the pain for this type of customer, right? Thereby creating this benefit. So a Value SaaS PM uses problem roadmap instead of a product roadmap, and he uses that to align engineering, marketing and sales and the rest of the organization. So one of the core things that a product manager does, like if you were to give him a title, I will give him a title of he's the Chief Translation Officer. One thing that product managers and people who are in early stage startup conflate is the difference between feature, benefit, and value. The way I like to describe this is feature, benefit, and value are three different things, and the way you distinguish them is by saying where do they reside. Feature is an attribute of a product. Feature resides on the product. However, by the use of the feature, what is the gain in customer's life? And how is that getting articulated? And usually it is the product designer, the manager, the founder who's articulating that gain in customer's life using the feature, right? That framing is benefit. But when you take that framing and talk to customers and confirm with them that this is indeed the benefit that they have had, indeed the gain that they have had in their life, that is value. So feature resides on product, benefit resides on the product manager's head, the product designer's head, and value resides on the customer's head, even though it may be the same set of keywords, right? So the job of the product manager is to be the translation officer from the customer to the engineer. Like when he begins out in a journey, he may first do a customer interview with him and try to understand his problems, like, have empathy, do interviews with them and try to understand what his problems are, and then bring them back to the engineer to say, hey, now you translate it as feature that we saw in the previous slide. Now once the features are built, then the solution, he's going to frame it in benefit language, and then he's going to double check with customers saying that, is this what you think it is? So the role of a product manager is this translation officer who knows multiple languages. The engineers may speak in a language like Tamil, and customers might speak in a language like Punjabi, and he's making sure that they are able to understand each other, right? So translation skills is one of the key roles that a value SaaS product manager does. The other thing that I have seen in my experience in the last couple of years is a value SaaS product manager comes from a domain experience, right? So he's someone who's spent a lot of time working with a lot of customers and building custom requirements and has a deep understanding of what customer needs. But in that domain, he may have actually spent a lot of time in just saying yes to every customer query that could have come. From there, he is moving to a role where he's saying that, look, I know that there is this range of requirements that is there, and I'm going to sort of think about this as a potter's clay. So when he's a domain expert, he's like a potter. But when he's trying to abstract it out and trying to productize it, the first stage is that he's building it like a potter's clay. Many products in India, or like large enterprise products such as SAP or like Tally in India, they all feel like a potter's clay. You could pretty much do everything that a customer could ask, but it is all hidden, it is all clumsy. But the ideal state is to say that, look, these are things that the product can't do. So from right to left, he's moving from, he will say yes to everything, to say no to few things, and then saying no to a lot of things by creating a shape and a curve in the product is. Like if I were to use examples of big companies, like, in Infosys versus like building a product like SAP, or going to then building a product like ChargeBee, going from a potter to building potter's clay to actually building pots, right? So while he does that, he also has to keep in mind that, the shape of a product makes a lot of the value, right? You can use the same potter's clay and you can create a pot, and if you sell it on street, and the functional job of that pot is to keep water cool, then that will fetch you about $30. But if you shape it into a showcase pot and you sell it in like flea markets, it'll fetch you about $1,500, right? So the shape decides the value here. And in physical product, it is very, very easy to understand. But when you move to software product, that is where it becomes very, very fuzzy. So licensed software, which is how, like, most of the software product that started, is all about ownership, right? You are buying a CD, but you're owning the CD. You're having an end user's license agreement. But SaaS is changing the model a little bit, where you're not owning it. So think about this as licensed software is like you have ownership document towards your house, and SaaS software is where you are renting the house, right? And that becomes the difference. But here, when whether you own the house or you rent the house, at an experience level, it may not feel very different. And this is one thing that a product manager, founder uses to define how and why it should like, have a certain shape, right? So another way to think about this is that a software product is nothing like an experience product. Think about it like as if you're designing a vacation. A vacation could be a 2-star vacation or it could be a 5-star vacation, right? But the vacation experience starts at the time you decide to do the vacation, the search that you do, the time you start the vacation by landing in the place where you have decided to start the vacation, and it ends when you come back to your home. So from that point onwards, every touch point in that experience is the vacation product, holiday product, right? So similarly in software as well, every experience that you are creating for your customer, every touch point that you're creating for your customer is product. Now, how do you use that? How do you bunch the problems in such a way that the first set of experience that he's going to have as touch points are a 2-star experience? How do you use that as a 3-star experience? What else will you do? Like, if you were to just take him from point A to point B, you could just, sort of take him in a rickshaw. But if you have a concierge and if you sort of drive him in a car, then that is going to enhance the experience from a 2-star experience to a 4-star experience. And that is what a product manager uses to package things in a different way. He understands that packaging is a value lever, and how you package them together from 2-star experience to 3-star experience to 5-star experience means delivering different value. Therefore, you can charge different price. That is how you will see that, many SaaS startups, they say, hey, here is a standard package, which may be equivalent to your 2-star experience. Here is a professional package, which could be equivalent to your 4-star experience. And here is an enterprise where people who can afford to pay 5-star experience, they literally do that. So here is an example from Sign Easy, where you see this standard, plus, and professional at play. And there, the value is different. It might be the same job to be done. The job to be done here is literally saying, hey, I want to do signature, but signature only for myself is a 2-star experience. But if I have to coordinate signature with multiple set of people, it's a enhanced experience, right? And therefore it is a 3-star or a 4-star experience. The other thing that a product manager does differently is that he does value-based pricing. He understands that you don't price products, you price customers, right? The same water can be available for 50 paisa outside on the street in a pouch, or for 50 rupees inside a 5-star hotel, right? It's solving the same problem at a functional level, quenching thirst. But when it is available in a 5-star, it is also signaling that this is more filtered water, this is more pure, and will have less health risk. And we are paying that premium for that brand, for that different experiences that we are being presented that with, right? So you don't price a product, you price the customer. And you price a customer because different customers derive different value, and different customer care for different star of experience. And if you know that you can deliver a 5-star experience, then you push the pricing to that level. So in fact, the simple definition of pricing that I like to use is just to say that pricing is a number which is cost plus whatever it costs you, and the value minus whatever is your customer's value is. And you can randomly pick a number in between. And sometimes this price number is doing a sumo fight with a competitor's price. And if you understand your value dimension really well, then you can make sure that you can get out of that positioning dimension, and then still go all the way up to the value that you're delivering to the customer. So yeah, so these are some of the things that a Value SaaS product manager does differently. Now, if I were to put this in form of a skill stack, right? What are the basic skills that a product manager needs to have? Then I'm sure, like most of you would agree with me, that product managers should have customer empathy skills. They should have great listening skills. And one of the things that I highlighted in the earlier slide is that they need to be able to translate from one language of one set of users or one set of stakeholders to another set of stakeholders. The management is going to speak a different language, engineers different language, marketing team and sales team are going to speak a different language, customers are going to speak a different language. They also need to be able to persuade, and storytelling is very important. Copywriting, which is persuasion in written format, is important. And one of the key skills for a product manager is influencing, right? You need to be able to influence others without authority. And this goes without saying that product managers are the ones that are going to keep the ship moving, so they need to get things done. These are basics. This may apply for even a biotech product manager. However, in the digital world, in the software world, you need to be able to process a lot of data, and you should be able to sort of affect a lot of decision making. Now, these are some of the skills for a skill stack of a product manager. Now, let's look at how they vary across different organizations. And this is my assessment of being a product manager in a startup, in a big company, and now that I'm seeing value SaaS product managers across the bigger tribe startup. In a big company, most of your focus, like, majority of your focus is you're just trying to influence. You're just trying to bring so many different people into the same shared vision. You're trying to say the same point again and again by creating a PPT, talking to this department, that department, and making sure that everybody is always on the same page. Now, while all these other skills may be needed, but this is all thin sliver, right? Like some companies will have a lot more emphasis on customer empathy, but getting things done and influencing are the most important things that you will be spending time on, right? And this will reflect some of the answers that you gave in the first question, saying that what is the most important thing that somebody has to do. The startup PM, on the other hand, is focused on just making sure that the ship is moving forward. So getting things done is very, very critical. And he may or may not have influence with an internal stakeholder, external stakeholder. Plus, they have to be great storytellers. They need to be able to inspire a lot of people in getting things done, right? Some amount of translation skills are required because you're again speaking to multiple stakeholders who are speaking very, very different language. Now, in a value SaaS PM, the biggest focus is that in that translation, in that ability to understand needs for different folks, and then translating it into value and understanding that positioning, right? And for that positioning, translating it better, right? And understanding that value of the customer so that you can anchor the right price, right? That becomes more important. So you do spend a lot more time in listening. You do spend a lot more time in understanding the customer. You become the voice of the customer, but you also spend your leverage through bringing in that translation. And that is the big difference for a value SaaS PM. Right. So to summarize, what are the things that we talked about? We said few things. One is that the definition of value SaaS is it is an uncompromising focus on unit economics before you step on growth. In the post-COVID world, people are realizing that value SaaS is not a nice to have, it is a must have, right? And if you don't do this, then you lead to blitz fail, as David Sachs talked about. And what are the things that a value SaaS PM does? A value SaaS PM lives inside the problem brain. He's a great translator of value across different stakeholders. He uses the problem roadmap to align stakeholders, and his power tools are on the 2-star, 4-star, 5-star, or called in another way, good, better, best packaging. And he uses value-based pricing to ensure that the growth eventually happens after the unit economics are discovered. So with that, I'll jump to Q&A, and Suhas, if you want to jump in here and moderate.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rajan. I think that was a great intro into the entire value base. I think you touched upon really good points, and I think for the participants that are out here, can see like there's a mix between the senior and people who are founders. So couple of questions that I really want to start with. These are a little more general into your career and specific slides from this section, and then we'll jump into the Slido link. So I'll just take 2-3 questions from there, and then I'll jump into the Slido link to see what the audience has already filled about 17 to 20 questions. So guys, quick heads up. So the link is in the comment section. Please upvote the ones that you guys find interesting, and also if you have any specific ones. So Rajan's been like a founder in the past. He's helped 100+ startups in the recent past. He's worked across Intuit, which is a huge B2b organization, at senior roles. So there is lots that you can cover, you can add there. And if other people, there are 80+ folks on this call. So if you guys find it relevant, please help us upvote. So Rajan, yeah, digging right in. First question is around your journey. So, you worked, you've started your career in the technical space, done a founder role, moved into product management with a B2B startup. And now for the past 2-3 years, you've been helping tons of, startups start from very early stage to help them into their growth stage and that path. And you picked one niche, which is value SaaS, helping B2B, that space. So, if you can just like share a little more about your experience, what you liked, what you think, is like, what were your experience, what were the challenges moving across different ways, because I think a lot of us can relate to that as well.
Right. So I'm very excited by this whole idea of Product Nation. So 10, 15 years ago, this is Motley Crue, who was initially part of NASCOM Product Conclave, and we got started there saying that, the IT services industry has created a lot of impact, and now it's the time for India to rise up in the value chain. So we need to create Product Nation, and that's how my association with Product Nation got started. It got crystallized as a name in 2013, but it started in 2009. So I'm very, very passionate about building products from India to the rest of the world, right? And I'm also interested in working with founders and startups, but really product startups, not like any type of startups, is what excites me. You're right. So since the last 3 years, I've been working with Upekha, where we are working with about 48 startups right now in helping them with their 100K to a million to 10 million journey. And like if we help them get to capital efficient unit economics flywheel, then then they can figure out whether they want to build a 100 million ARR business or they want to find an exit. Before this, I spent about 6 years at Intuit. Oh, sorry. Before that, I spent about 2 years with the Product Nation team full time in helping with M&A.
Okay.
I've seen that building great products is one thing, but building great product business is something else. And I've seen a lot of founders build great products, but not being able to translate that into a meaningful financial outcome. So I spent 2 years trying to figure out, what is the missing piece in that side of the jigsaw puzzle. And spent 6 years at Intuit. I did product management in different teams, one within accounting. And then before I left Intuit, I was looking at product management for QuickBooks India. Before
Okay.
India, I was doing accounting module for across multiple geography. But when I left Intuit, I was a product manager for the India market. I
Got it.
joined in Intuit as a person to help engineers within Intuit to understand how to build product and take it to market. So that was my role. And I actually, my first startup was a B2C startup. I was
Yep.
building something which is similar to a Periscope between 2007 and 2010.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first journey into building product. And
Okay.
prior to that, I was in a startup which got acquired. That was again a mobile startup. So my journey has been, I'm a computer sciences engineer, 2003 pass out, interested about building cutting edge products. Got into a mobile startup, saw the exit journey, acquisition journey of that. Did my own startup, which was this Periscope equivalent, and then Intuit, where I really learned product management. So the startup journey was something like throwing the baby into the swimming pool and say, okay, go figure, right? So that's me learning product building, product
Yep.
management on my own. And I had
Yep.
great mentors who guided me then, and I learned it through doing mistakes. But
Yep.
I really learned product management when I was at Intuit, because I think
Exactly.
one like some of the best product management people I have found at Intuit.
100% agree. Yeah. And just to add to that, I think the reason I brought this up is just to set a context. But in Tweet, I think there's a D4D principle. I had attended one of the workshop where they took us through that for 3 hours, and very smooth. So if that is something that you guys actually implement internally, I think I think
Yeah,
it,
so
it would
it's called Design for Delight, and it is
exactly.
a Intuit spin on design thinking. And design thinking is something that IDEO uses. There is a
Mm-hmm.
small simplification and slight tailoring that we have done from an Intuit practice. Yeah, I used to teach that to a lot of engineers in my initial role. So lean startup and
Got it.
design thinking, or
Got it.
D4D was the initial. So my role in India was is to bring that from the US to the India office.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I think at a later stage, maybe that is a workshop we could do. But yeah, to set that context, I think thanks so much for sharing. Jumping right in. So since you mentioned about Intuit, um, One question that I've seen across the past few webinars is, B2C is sexy, but you've chosen now, like you've moved from B2C to B2B to helping a bunch of. So what are some challenges that you see and what are some learnings that you have across this ecosystem? A lot of people, might might have this. I think I'm not sure whether I can call it an imposter syndrome, but it often feels like the grass is greener on the other side. So anything that you can share your thoughts on this?
So I don't think about it in terms of like, that B2C is good or B2B is like B2C is not good, B2B is bad.
Yeah.
It's just that I think about it in terms of gameplay, right? So
Yep.
if you look at B2C and in the tech space, it's a
Yeah.
winner takes all market. B2B, it is not a winner takes all market. In B2B,
Okay.
what you will see is that number two, number three player can build 100 million revenue business, right?
Okay.
But in B2C, in most of the category, if you are not the number one, then you don't matter, right? And
Okay.
most of the time, the gameplay is about the last man standing, which is why
Mhm.
it leads to this crazy focus on saying that I want to like amass the highest amount of capital, right? Because it looks like that if you had the highest amount of capital, you will be able to stand in the game the longest. And like if you don't know who's going to win, but like everybody else is going to just tire and step out of the
Yep.
game, then you become the like default winner,
Last one
right?
standing. Yeah.
So that is why you would see that insane amount of funding happens in specific categories. And the way funding happens is they look for specific categories and they say, okay, one winner has been found, let us just double down on that. Like take the example of Mintra, Let's Buy. These were all startups that had like very good funding and started at the same time as Flipkart. But when everybody realized that it is Flipkart who might look like a winner, it made more sense to like merge them within Flipkart and then say, okay, I'm gonna like ride along with them.
Got
So
it.
so B2C gameplay is about winner takes all, and winner takes all means like fast, quick, and biggest, and therefore the like crazy focus on growth comes in. But
Mhm.
B2B, you can be number two, number three, but you could still build a large business, even venture business. What is Freshworks taught us that even if you're number two, number three in that particular category, you can build 100,
Mhm.
$200 million business. So I like this
Got it.
game more because it's a lot more in control. You got a better shot, right?
Mhm.
And there it is a lot more, I would say, luck that comes into play, right? So
Mhm.
it's a question of gameplay, right? I mean, and in any game, like you might like blackjack, I might like poker, right?
Mhm.
And in
Mhm.
blackjack, you could win, but then was it all because of you? Versus poker,
Exactly.
there is a little bit of skill, right? So it's
Exactly.
up to the individual to make their choice. And if you won in blackjack, it will definitely give you imposter syndrome, right? The
Right.
way to deal with it is different. I absolutely tell people that try to get lucky, right?
Mhm.
That is about managing your own psychology, which is the most important thing for a founder to do. But if you are
Right.
playing blackjack, right, if you got lucky with that, like live happily with it, don't have imposter syndrome. But just know that you won a lottery. Here there is a little bit
Absolutely.
skill that is involved, and that makes you feel better.
Got it. Got it.
I don't know if
Yeah.
answered your
No,
question.
no, absolutely. I think thanks so much for sharing that. I am personally on an internal products team, so helps me also, and also build like a bunch of like indie products. So I try to find a relation. I think this is something that we were discussing in our chat earlier. I thought it'd be very useful to bring this up.
That's right.
So yeah, that was great. Um, Probably one last question before we jump into the audience bit
Mhm.
is over the last 3 years, working with say 100 plus startups and now with your 48 startups at Ubega, what do you see as the major challenges that founders early on face? There are a couple of founders here, or I think this is something as a learning for a lot of people who maybe want to take a step and build their own stuff. So what are some things that you see as a common trend, maybe resources that you can share, or anything that you think might help this segment of
So
users?
we internally we look at it through the lens of inflection, right? Inflection in the journey of a founder, of the individual journey of the founder. Like one big inflection that happens is what we call as the, like looking at it the problem lens, right? And we always look at founders and say that pick a market where you have a better founder market fit. If you were a Cisco engineer, a Cisco product manager, don't go build e-commerce company, because you will have some insights in this particular space that will help you move ahead of the rest of the crowd, right? So first is
Mhm.
founder market fit. And in the founder market fit, the shift that happens is like when we are engineer, when we are deep into a certain subject, we have high amount of curse of knowledge, right? But when we are able to come out of that curse of knowledge and look through problem lens, then suddenly things just take a different turn, and then they start seeing that they are making progress. So this is almost foundational. This is just like, I've seen it again and again and again. Problem lens changes like how founders view the world, right? After that, I would say, like, most of the people ask me questions about growth. Many people think that, winning in startup is about fixing sales. Like Guy Kawasaki has this famous statement saying that sales fixes all problem. At least in SaaS that I've seen, it is not the case. It is pricing that fixes all the problem, right? If you have undersold, right? In this anxiety to grab a customer, founders go and like make product as cheap as possible, almost up to zero, right? I believe more in what Mark Anderson said, right? He said, like, you are too hungry to be successful, right? So in the sense that, you are saying that, look, I like, you're starving, right? But you should be like confident in increasing your pricing, right? So that is another thing. When the founder flips on that, then it is like, a different trajectory, and it is a different founder itself. So problem lens, and at least for B2B, understanding the impact of pricing are like, like life changer.
Absolutely. I think, as I mentioned in the chat section also, two important things that we want to go deeper into in this Q&A. First one is exactly what you mentioned, the pricing. And a really good point that you brought out in the slides is essentially value-based pricing versus, say, cost-based. A lot of us early on start thinking about cost-based. It can be like, this is my cost. Maybe I give a marginal 10, 20% again. That becomes my pricing. Instead, it is the value that you provide. And then, so do you have additional things that you can share around this? Maybe, examples of startups who've done it, or how does one go about thinking? Is there like a formula that you can put to come up with, say, an X price? How do you think about value-based pricing?
No, it has to start all the way up from the problem, Suhas. Unless we understand the problem, unless we
Is it
understand the value.
possible to like give us an example, anything that you've seen in the recent past, anything for us to look
Sure.
at?
So like, I can give like one terrific example is ChargeBee. Like everybody should take a look at ChargeBee. They are like beautiful when it comes to defining pricing. One thing that Krish tells everyone, and I repeat it often enough, is that as founders, you should be working on pricing and update your pricing page almost on a monthly basis. There is this company called Profitwell that has done a study. It says that 70% of the time that a founder spends on is on acquisition and sales, but the biggest impact that happens is on pricing, and founders spend less than 10% of their time in a year on pricing. So pricing, Krish is a great example. Another example from Opeka Tribe that I can talk about is, look at a company called Hello Tars, right? So they were a horizontal product. And initially when they started out, they were saying that we provide chatbot platforms, and here it is available for $19, right? And they said, unlimited chatbot. Now they have a pricing page which says only 5 chatbots, $99. That's the first plan. The second plan is $499, right? And the third plan is talk to me if you're an enterprise. Right? The first thing when it comes to pricing is there is this hesitation, there is this fear, saying that, should I increase price? What if the customer runs away? Right? You have to come over that hesitation, right? And from going from offering this multiple, like, unlimited offer to saying that this is what I'm going to offer for $99, it worked. And what they did was they said, look, I'm not going to focus on everybody. I'm not focusing on chatbot as a platform. I'm going to focus on marketers who use forms. Instead of forms, I'm going to say that, can you use chatbots and do a conversational landing page? And that's why I said, right, it goes all the way to the problem. They understood that for marketers, when they use chatbot as a conversational landing page, their value is so much high that their conversion rate bumps up from 50% to at least 50% to at least about 200%. So if you look at their homepage, it says that, are you like, do a conversational landing page, increase your conversions by 50 to 200%, and like, pay me $99. Right? So one is mindset, another is aligning to value. Then once you understand that, the impact that you're creating is at least worth $3,000, you wouldn't pay me $100 for that. Then the conversation becomes so simple and aligned on that. Then the only question to ask is, what if your competitor is available for $49, right? Then the question, so then the question is, what is your competitor offering, right? What you want to do is, you need to find out your positioning. You say that, look, I am about conversational landing page, he's about chatbot. If chatbot is what you're looking for, please go to the competitor.
Right.
If you're looking for 50 to 200% of bump on your conversion, then I'm your guy, right? Because they will only give you chatbot, but I will give you the value, right? So you want to position your competitor into another bucket and say that is the case, then you go and talk. So you're not making an apple to apple comparison. Tell the customer you're making an apple to orange comparison. Don't compare the number, compare the category and the value, and then that becomes a easy way to handle that sales objection.
Very interesting. This last bit that you said, does that happen like on a call, or is that something that is possible via a landing page? Just very quickly.
That depends on the type of customer
Product.
persona that you're dealing with. If it is a small ticket item, then the buyer decision is happening on the website,
Right.
and they are evaluating multiple offers, right? And therefore, like you would see many SaaS companies would put on their footer saying that why we are a better alternative compared to that, and that's where you answer that. But if you are a larger ticket size, this happens over a sales call or a demo call.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, thanks. I think yeah, that's some great insights on the pricing bit. One other thing that I want to dig deeper into was a bunch of questions coming in, but yeah, the section that you had on skills for PM, I think that's a great point. A couple of us on a WhatsApp group were discussing this just 2 days ago, and would it be okay for you to dig a little deeper into this? A lot of PMs in the group, a lot of founders in the group. How does the skill set, how does one go about building the skill set while I am, say, at an early stage versus if I'm at a bigger company, or if I want to get into products? So, 3 buckets where I'm already into PM, but these 2 buckets, or if I'm getting into PM, anything that you can,
So as you and I have spoken about it over email and separate chat. I am a firm believer that product manager is a skill set that you'll learn through apprenticeship, right? So you spend time with great product managers, you become great product managers. Of course, you can do reading. I mean, and I can suggest a book for every layer. I could say that, for listening, read Art of Listening. For customer empathy, I tell people to read Mom's Test. Like for translation, I ask people to read Le Lefebvre's The Art of Explanation. So you could pretty much give a book for every layer and you could self-learn it. But when you work with somebody else is when you really understand it, right? So I don't have an easy answer than that, saying that whatever next level that you're looking for, go work with that person. At Intuit, we used to have this practice of following a leader. Like my CTO at that time used to go and follow the CTO of Yahoo at that point in time, saying that, how do you do business? I want to reach to that level. So let me go and look at it. So apprenticeship of the next level that you're looking at is how I have found to be the most effective way to kind of learn this. I don't have any other easy answer, but I can certainly give a book recommendation for each one of the skill layer.
Absolutely. Let's do one thing. Maybe that in detail we could do it over Twitter. Like you could share, we could compile that and share that. But that's a fair point. I agree with you on that. Just to close that section, say someone apprentice. Yeah, I think that model has not yet kicked off in India yet. It's a great model.
Doing a
We both
great job there in
trying our
trying
best.
to kick it off. Yeah.
Yeah. But apart, like from the current options available, do you think maybe reaching out on LinkedIn, does that work, or
See, product people are some of the most nicest people, right? Right. So they'll always answer question, but you also have to keep in mind that product people are the most stretched, right? I had a manager who used to say that a product manager is like a mom, right? So her definition of a product manager is like a mom. So they have this empathy. They are nice, right? They have this warmth, but then moms, they are handling so many things that anything that goes wrong, the mom is to blame, and anything that goes right, the credit doesn't go to her, right? So some of the best product managers that are out there, they are too stretched for time. And this is something that I tell anybody who's looking for mentor, right? If you go out and look for a mentor, nobody's good mentors are going to say that, look, I don't have the time. But you ask them specific question and keep them interested, right? You say that, look, this is a specific problem that I'm having. Can you help me with that? They will give you one answer, and just continue to engage with them. And if they are interested in the kind of question that you are asking, they will continue to engage with you. Just don't say that I want you to be my mentor. That's not how mentorship works. But if you reach out to someone with specific questions that you're dealing with, Then product managers, I have reached out to a lot of product managers outside of my domain,
Yep.
spoke to them, took advice, and got on a call.
Yep.
And I still, sort of speak to some of them regularly.
Yep. Yep. I think, yeah, I mean, you put it in the most concise. That is the baseline. That is probably the only point. But yeah, thanks so much. And fun fact is probably that's another way we connected, right? It was cold off Twitter, connected, and yeah, I think that's probably a great point that you brought out. Um, Jumping right into the Q&A, we have 27 questions. Rajan, how much time do you have on this? I think we've overshot it, but we still
I
have a
can
lot
go
of.
as long as you suggest.
Okay. I'll try limiting it to 5 questions. So guys, please help me upvote the ones you guys like and add the ones that you think are interesting. Um, the one right on top is super funny. What is the software you guys, your PPT is super cool. So everyone's been appreciating that in the chat. So guys, yeah, shout out to Rajan for that. It is a plugin. It's a Prezi plugin. So you guys could check that out. But
Yeah, I was going to turn it into a quiz. I wanted to say, hey, guys,
oh,
guess.
my
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. No. I think, the zoom in and zoom out, like people can guess that it
Feature.
is Prezi. But this
Yeah.
one is called as Prezi Video.
Prezi video, yeah. And guys, we'll share a deck with you guys maybe in another format at a later stage, so you guys could grab. I think that skills thing is super important, and maybe we'll try working with Rajan on adding those books to that. That'll be great. Moving on to the next one. Any tips on leveraging problem brain going? Okay. The question is around the problem part of it. Any tips on leveraging problem brain, or how do we grow it? Any tips, any examples, anything that you can share around that?
On like what is the can you just
I
ask
think
the
on
question
your
again?
slides you had mentioned something around the problem, like, figure out the problem, spend some more time on it, and that is what will lead you. People don't spend enough time on the problem side of things, but maybe directly jump into solutioning it, or it can be the biases that set in. I think that's what I understand from this question.
Right. So it's a skill, it's a muscle that you have to build. If you're looking for basic tips on how to do it's about how you ask conversation, right? So when you're speaking to a customer, you want to frame it in an open-ended kind of a way. You want to say, like, tell me about how a day in your life looks like, as opposed to saying, hey, I have this feature, do you like it? Hey, I have this feature, do you like it? People are going to say yes or no. Maybe they'll say yes because they want to get rid of you. Right? So when you ask very closed-ended question, you're not going to understand what is the life that they are living and what is the problem that they are having. So in like problem thinking, questions are your pickaxes, right? So the way you frame the question is how you are going to understand. Excuse me. The way you frame it is how you're going to understand the problem. You don't ask people on saying, hey, tell me what are the problems that you have. But when you say that, hey, what do you do and where do you get irritated, what bugs you, and when you frame it in an intelligent way, in an open-ended kind of way, then people start telling you things that you've not even asked. And the recommendation of the book that I already said, which is Mom's Test, I give it to all associate product managers that I work with, and I say, or I give it to all founders that I work with, and I say, go read this. So that has a good framework in terms of turning closed-ended questions into open-ended questions. That's why that's a great book. And I have seen that people still struggle. So I get people who have read Mom's Test to do a mock interview session with someone who understands it, can and help you with that. So first you read, and then I connect them with someone who knows this and say, okay, now you have to invest in the skill. You need to practice the skill, because it only comes through practice. So learn and then practice the art of asking questions. That's how you change your brain from a feature brain to a problem brain.
Very interesting. Yeah. I think that is something even we as a community can enable. I think it's a great point that you mentioned. Reading has its place. Mom's Test, yeah, that's a book. I think reading has its place, learning has its place, but the application is also important. So great point. I think, Rajan, one more thing is there are a lot of specific questions. So do you do, like, just a suggestion, do you have any office hours that you do? Because I don't think we can cover those specific questions here.
So I do office hours with the startups. We can do an AMA later.
Yeah,
and
I think, I think the specific question, that'll be great. That one-to-one we'll definitely do. I'll club a couple of questions which I think are interesting. Product management is glorified. I think we spoke about, everyone talks about, you should get into product. It's exciting right now. Everyone talks about that. But what are, say, three things that you have found in your journey that are the real challenges, the hard things that people are not talking enough about?
So for me, the biggest like learning, or I would say bummer when I became a big company product manager is I thought, product manager gets to set pricing, will get to, sort of do
The
this and that.
manager.
But
Yeah.
then like, my biggest like, chunk of work in a large company was just getting everybody to align with a shared vision. Right.
Got it. Got it.
And like, then I realized that that is the most important thing to do, because in a large company, people are all going in different direction. And it is the
Mm-hmm.
job of the product manager to make sure that, you are making progress in a certain direction. I like this to the metaphor of saying that, different teams are like, these ants pulling the sugar cube in different direction. Everybody is working, but, the forces are canceling each other and there is no displacement. So it is the
Right.
job of the product manager in a large company to be able to like align these people in a way that, you are making kind of progress. So for me, the big company learning was that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in a smaller company, I realized that, as a product manager, you're just getting things done, but you're
Mm-hmm.
also the person who are like literally figuring out the gameplay, right? So you
Yep.
ask this question of B2C versus B2B. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to get a quick sense of like, what is the game that I'm playing, right? In
Right.
B2C, like, am I going to focus on just like explaining ROI, or am I going to focus on growth in a way
Mm-hmm.
that I like stand out as winner in the market? So early
Mm-hmm.
stage product manager, gameplay is very, very exciting, and that becomes the biggest leverage that a product manager can bring in a large company, in an early stage startup. And in Value SaaS, the most
Mm-hmm.
recent observation that I've seen, great product managers are brilliant at pricing and packaging.
Right.
Packaging and pricing are the leverage that they
Super
bring in.
important. Yep.
So look, across my journey, like I said, coordination, bringing everybody to shared vision, early stage, like getting a pulse of the gameplay, and
Mm-hmm.
packaging and pricing is the leverage. So product manager
Fair
is the
point.
person of leverage, right?
Got
He
it.
brings in the leverage, and that is why it is so important. Like, it's a great role, and
Mm-hmm.
leverage is never visible,
Got it. Got it.
right? And
Yep.
that's why like, it sounds very exciting, but you can't map it to a sales role, where
Yep.
in case of sales role, you can
Yep.
say I hit this quota, I oversubscribe this quota, and things like that.
Yep. Yep.
They don't bring
Interesting.
leverage, they bring targets and efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fair point. Fair point. Moving on, I see a couple of questions around hiring and sales. So, if you were, I'll just rephrase it. If you were
Mhm.
to get involved with a very early stage startup today, say you need to do your first 10 hires on the tech side. Say you are a product guy, you need a couple of guys to build out the tech. Say first 10 hires, and you need a couple of guys on the sales and marketing. Lesser number compared to tech. How would Rajan go about this? Is
So
there a playbook?
like, the best answer that I can give is steal it from my favorite CEO of all
Yeah.
time, which is
Mm-hmm.
Brad Smith. He was the CEO of Intuit when I was there, and
Mm-hmm.
he actually paraphrased Jeff Bezos. It is the like, two pizza rule, right? You want the
Uh-huh.
size of the team that only two pizzas can feed, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
want the team to be as minimal as possible. If
Mm-hmm.
I'm building a B2C startup, I will hire one front end, one back end, one designer,
Mm-hmm.
right, and
Mm-hmm.
one PM, right, who's going to sort of be a very, very small, active, agile team, right, who are going to find out the deep consumer insight, saying if I delete it,
Yep.
and that is where the value is, therefore I can
Mm-hmm.
build a Snapchat, and who can like create a lot of iteration of that type of products in literally in matter of weeks, and then like push it out, and then look at the data, the behavior, and then kind of move forward. But if it is a B2B product, like a
Mm-hmm.
SaaS company, I would say that, what is the gameplay that you're doing? Are you going after a commodity market? Then I will build an engineering team of maybe 3 to 5 people who
Mm-hmm.
will come in and build feature parity to the competitor that we are going after. But if
Fair.
it is a deep domain product, new category that we are doing, then
Yeah.
it may need more people in understanding spending domain. So there again, the engineering team will be light, but the
Mm-hmm.
domain people will be high, and you will
Yep.
spend close to about year and a half trying to just understanding the domain itself. And so you
Mm-hmm.
can put out something early, so you will have
Mm-hmm.
like a back end engineer, a front end engineer, you may or may not need a designer, right?
Got it.
But in all the cases, it is going to be like a small team that a pizza or two can feed, not 10
Absolutely.
people engineer, right? And I use this metaphor to tell people that like a cricket team needs a bowler, batsman, and a wicket keeper and a captain, right? If you build an engineering team, it is all saying that I'm only going to have great bowlers, right? So early stage startup, please like make sure that if you're playing cricket, get all the right roles that are needed, right? Back
Right.
end, front end design if it is consumer, and domain, back end, and engineering if it is B2B.
Great point. Great point. Taking it one step further, I think the question, if we can dig a little deeper, is there a playbook today to hire good folks? As in, I'll give you an example. Today, in case we say we have a position for a front end engineer, we put it out on LinkedIn. If there's an easy apply, I get 200 plus folks within one day. But the challenge there is for me as an early stage founder, how many can I really go after? How do are there any playbooks? Like, is there any tips and tricks to hire, or where do I find good guys to work on an very early stage? Or maybe if that doesn't work, if there's any other way to do it.
So like, if you're talking specifically about like, the tactics of hiring,
Huh, huh.
right, then like I may not be the best person, at least at this point in time, not had experience to hire, because see,
Got
the
it.
hiring thing is something that depends on supply and demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
When there is crazy amount of funding, no
Hmm.
amount of great tips and tactics can help you. But there is
Got it.
one thing that I have seen, right, whether it
Yeah,
is US, India,
yeah,
Bay Area, Boston,
yeah,
Bangalore,
yeah.
see, great teams get formed around great founders,
Mm-hmm.
right? I actually say that what marketing is to product, culture is to hiring, right?
Right.
If you have not you've not become this beacon of this great culture that you're going to create,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you have money or you don't have money, you will find it very difficult to hire.
Got it.
If you are this like founder that can inspire people to come and work with you,
Mm-hmm.
then like even if you have lesser money, that may still be not a big disadvantage. So like those people who are able to put together great teams are those who are able to inspire people to come behind them,
Got
right?
it.
And that ability to tell story, inspire team, right, is a great skill that a founder has to acquire,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can only give you like at that level generic answer, but I
No
can't
worries.
give you right now any specific tips on how
No
to hire
worries.
the first 10.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was asking from the angle that maybe your the startups that you have, is this a challenge that they're facing? But we could go into that another time. Like we could dig deeper
Yeah,
into that.
most of the times people say that they have 10, like in SaaS, I tell that half of your team should be engineering, half should be sales and marketing. You should
Okay.
have SDR, AE, and LDR hired. You should
Right.
have had your person who is going to make sure that your marketing and demand gen is there. So
Mm-hmm.
what we see is that at about $100,000, there are 10 people in the company. At about $1 million, there are about 35 people in the company. At about
Mm-hmm.
$10 million, there are about 100 people in the company. And in variants, I have seen that for a SaaS company, it is half and half. If you have
Mm-hmm.
80% in engineering, then you are over investing in R&D, which may lead you to sort of raise more money, lead you down to the vanity path. To keep
Mm-hmm.
in value SaaS path, we say that like split it half and half. And this is based
Very
on
nice.
data that we've had. So we help our founders in hiring more SDRs, AEs, demand gen, and brand marketer. And
Okay.
I actually say, man, you've been an engineering founder, like you should be
Yeah.
able to attract engineering founders. So like
Right.
I spend very little time in helping them with that.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think those are key points, I think, to understand. Another part is on the customer side of things. So this is probably hiring, but how do you have you had experience or your founders early on? How do they go about building or getting the first set of customers? So you have an idea, you have say an MVP in place. Is there a playbook for that? Any?
So I would recommend read the Value
Yeah.
SaaS guidebook, right?
Yeah. Okay.
In the
No, for
sense
sure.
that that is the experience distilled from many founders. My experience, Prasanna's
Right.
experience in saying how do you get to your first $10,000. But in that,
Mm-hmm.
there is a section in the book where I say how to get to your first 10 customers. There is
Mm-hmm.
literally no specific straightforward answer, right?
Got it.
So like the first 10 customer is like it's going to come from within your network, but
Mm-hmm.
you would have hit product market fit equivalent, or like that there is established that there is a demand for your product when people
Mm-hmm.
from outside your network gives you the first $10, $15, or the first price point that you have set. So the
Got it.
first, like it'll depend so much on the industry that you're in. If you are building a marketing automation tool, then you need to hang out in growth hackers. If you're building something which is going to yield like benefit to developers, you will spend time on product hunt. If it is like a sales automation tool that you've done, then you'll spend a lot of time in like sales hacker. So
Mhm.
the way for that, whether you're building a B2C or B2B, is how do you build your first 10 customers? How do you build your next 10? The whole 1,000 true fan is a
Yeah.
great framework to use to
Amazing.
think about. But
Yeah.
in the context of B2B, it is like paid customer. You will do anything that takes, right?
Mm.
Okay. On the other hand, when somebody is building from India to the rest of the world,
Yeah.
or somebody is even getting started, this is something that we tell our founders, that even before you launch the product, 8 months before, start your brand narrative, right? Start your content marketing engine, right?
Mm.
Most of the people, they think that marketing has to be started after the
The
product has been
product.
released into the market, right?
Right.
You have a origin story of the startup. You can build a narrative around that. You can say, why do you care about solving this problem? And you can write your views on your blog for about 6 months, and there will be people who are interested in knowing that, and they'll be willing to sort of try it out because of how passionate you are about a particular problem. So like launching your brand narrative or the origin story way before you launch your product is critical. Now, even if you have not done that, after you have launched the product, please set up like a rhythm, almost as a hygiene, to say that
Mhm.
I'm going to write a blog post, I'm going to write Quora answers,
Mhm.
to make sure that you are getting inbound. And those startups which are building inbound, especially in the SaaS category,
Mm.
they have to pay like a big emphasis on content marketing.
Very interesting. Uh, Actually, like I've been working on an indie product on the side, and these are points that are very similar to how we think. So I think there's definitely giving me ideas on what we could, you know, lot of great points that you mentioned. I think we should definitely jump deeper into these playbooks on the next session. Um,
Sure.
I think we pretty much the questions are flowing in. I'll do one thing. I'll send the set of questions to you. Maybe you could pick these up from here. I'll pick one last question for now, and hopefully we'll do like an virtual office hours with you next. This question is pretty interesting. It says, "What is one thing that you do differently in case you could go back?" This is something I ask in a different form as a closing question. I generally ask something like, "If you knew then what you know now, what would happen?" But someone else asked, "What is it one thing that you do differently if you could start right over?" Is there anything? Maybe this is PM specific. I'm
Yeah.
assuming it's PM specific.
So one thing that I would do differently, I have to tell a story for that.
Right.
Right. So the story is what I call as the story of three founders on a beach. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So over the last many years of experience, I have seen three types of founders. What I first is what I call as a surfer, and I mentioned about them briefly in today's presentation. They're always looking for the next big tide to ride. Right.
Mm-hmm.
They are saying that e-commerce the next big thing, group shopping is the next big thing, AI/ML is the next big thing, fintech startups is the next big thing. And these type of founders, they have to almost be unfaithful to the previous idea that they had, because like the tide that is going down, you don't like ride on that. You have to anticipate the next tide that is coming, and you have to jump on top of that, right? A type of founder that does surfing, they feel thrilled when they're doing that surfing, right? And it is so cool, right? Because like people from Time magazine will come and feature you on the front page, and most of us want to become founder because we imagine ourselves in the front page of Time magazine. Now these people go to a few blind men on the beach, and then they say, hey, give me some money, I want to do this tide riding. They say, oh, you don't take 10 million, I can hear that this is going to be great, so take 100 million, right? So this is one type of a gameplay where gratification is instant, right? And you, like, some people will get a lot of money early on. And if I were to give some example, Kunal Bahl of Snapdeal
Mm-hmm.
or Vijay Shekhar Sharma of Paytm are these type of founders, right? Who are always looking at the next big trend, next big thing that they want to jump onto.
Mm-hmm.
The second type of founders that I see is what I call as a voyager. They've been on some voyage. They worked in a previous company. They've learned certain skills. They have it in their head. And this previous company was going after a treasure hunt of saying that I want to be the number one enterprise software company. And they may have had conversation with the captain of the ship saying that don't go enterprise software, go 15 degrees northeast and say enterprise software for this particular segment. They would have not listened. So they come back and then they say that I want to create another journey to conquer this new treasure island that I asked the previous captain to do, right? And after the stories of Surfer is over, like, the journalists go after the Voyager. And then they say, oh, great story of how you are able to build $100 million business. If I were to give examples for that from India, Jaspreet of Dhruva or even Girish of Freshdesk fits into the Voyager category, right? And there again, there are vagaries in the sea, but it's a fun journey, but you are all doing it based on the past experience that you've had. Then finally, I call the third type of founder as a fisherman. So this is the person that goes into the corner in a sea and says that I'm going to put my fishing rod, wait there and catch a few fish, feed myself, sell extra in the market, right? And there he comes back home and he has a very tough life. And then he looks at this Surfer and the Voyager and say that, dream chasers, right? Why are people giving them so many kudos and credits? But then he says, forget it, I'm just going to enjoy life. I like it this way. I like the the struggle that I'm getting, but I also enjoy my life. So this goes on for weeks, months and years. And after that, this small fisherman becomes a big shipping magnate, right? And there the journey is a delayed gratification. There it is not instant gratification like how you saw in terms of a Surfer, right? Eventually you became big, right? And then after the Voyager stories are over, then the journalists run after the fisherman saying, oh, what a great story of a small fisherman turning into a big fishing magnate, right? So there are these three different type of founders, right? It's just that the skills are different. In first one, storytelling and this ability to anticipate the next tide and jumping onto that is the most important skill. You get fame and fortune instantly. On the fisherman side, it is just doing chop wood, carry water kind of a thing almost on a daily basis till you become big, right? It's delayed gratification. And I tell founders that through my experience, through my own experience, I'm like, okay, I have no problem which one you choose. You just know that they are different skill. The skill stacks are different, right? But then I tell that the story doesn't end here. There is an addendum to the story, the picture abhi baki hai kind of a version, right? So in that, I say the problem is not in choosing one of the three. The problem is when you take a surfboard and paddle inside a pond. And then you have this mistaken belief because somebody has told you, maybe your astrologer, that if you are surfing inside a pond, your horoscope says that at that time there will be a dormant volcano that will erupt and create a tide inside a pond. No, that is not happening. So if you have to surf, you have to go where the waves are. You have to go where the waves are going to be appreciated, right?
Right.
So if you're doing a machine learning startup or a deep tech startup, I tell people that you should be doing it in Bay Area in Canada, where these are going to be funded, right? So coming back to your question, what is one thing that I would do differently? So the moral of the story for me is to say that what do you do is less important than where do you do it, right? And it is okay to pick individual gameplay. I mean, I can pick a fisherman gameplay and I can be in a certain location. But if I pick a fisherman gameplay, certain locations are more suited for that. If I want to do a surfer gameplay, then I better be in those places where the waves are. So the game location match is what I would do differently.
Got it. I think, everyone loves a good story, and I think you brought it out really well. I think that was very interesting to hear, and hopefully we can go and internalize this, understand a little better, and apply it to our own situations. But thank you so much, Rajan. I think I loved hosting this session, learned a lot personally from this deck, and hopefully, guys, if you liked it as well, please do give him a shout out, request him, spam him for the AMA or the office hours. We'd be happy to host and happy to help organize it. But I really think this was super valuable. And if you guys are building, early stage, if there's anything that we could do to help, do let us know. We have a bunch of initiatives that are coming up. One of them, which we recently launched, is the 100 PMs, Rajan. So what we're trying to do is trying to get trying to recognize. I think there are a lot of product leaders. One of the things that we've been doing as product folks also, but essentially, if you guys know any mentors, anyone who has helped you personally, or you who you think should be brought to the spotlight, please do let us know. And Rajan, one very interesting thing how this came up was we were actually discussing the topic. Actually, how it came up was how do we get more women interested in the space, or if they're interested, how do we inspire more women leaders to come. We are also trying that. We're also trying to reach out to more speakers, being recorded, but that is essentially the idea. Trying how do we get them to the spotlight. So this is one idea. We haven't highlighted this, but we are hoping more people help us bring them to the, and everyone gets inspired that way, right? Like once you hear stories and hear how they've done it, it will hopefully like inspire. So that is the idea with 100 PMs. But yeah, so apart from that, thanks once again, Rajan. I think we love this session. I think Rajan has a small
before we
yeah
close. Before we close, I want to sort of ask one question from the
yeah
audience.
yes I was giving that to you.
I want to do another mentee before we close this. I want all of you to go to mentee.com again, but this time use a different code called 456781 and answer this question. What is one takeaway from this session that you had right, that you would apply to the next week?
Yep. Rajan, if you could just share the code again, I'll put it in the chat section.
456781. Yeah, it's a simple, easy to remember number.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me sort of quickly share results from there.
Mm-hmm.
Is my screen visible?
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Okay. So the responses are yet to come in.
Guys, do let us know if you're facing any issues filling that link. It's 456781. I think we still have over
Tech
50
to sales
of us.
ratio. Okay.
Tech to sales ratio. Interesting.
Interesting.
It's just one word that you guys need to enter. So
founder location fit. Okay. All right. Build the problem muscle. Okay, that's a good one.
founder location for build the problem muscle. Tech to sales ratio. These are interesting ones.
Either the internet is slow or like people are thinking.
Guys, do let us know in case like I think there are already like 50 of us connected, so I don't think it's a internet issue. Guys, are you all able to connect to the link? Is there any issue there? Not sure.
Sure, I'm gonna keep the link open so like folks can add in as and when they can.
Perfect.
Right? And I'll share the outcomes also with you, Suhas.
Absolutely, we'd love that. So guys, do share what you think was one takeaway that you. I think that we'll also share the deck with you. Anything that you learned from this, so that would help us as well, and Rajan also to focus on that. And any feedback that you have, I think Rajan's active on Twitter as well. Feel free to give him a shout out. Anything that you liked about it, anything that you guys would like to learn more about, and yeah, definitely do reach out to us. Thank you once again for reaching out. I hope the session was useful to you. I definitely learned a lot again, Rajan. So thanks once again. And
yeah, here is the link to the Value SaaS guide.
SaaS guide. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat section as well.
Sure. Okay,
Maybe you
I
could
think
just
the responses are coming in. Oh, I should zoom in.
zoom in a little bit. I think a little more. Yeah, that's perfect. Value SaaS guide. Awesome. I've added it to the chat section as well. So yeah, with that, I think we come to the end of the session. So thanks again, once again, for partnering with us on this, Upeka. So shout out to Upeka on this. If you guys are interested in building or getting into SaaS startup, definitely check it out. They have another cohort coming up in August. So if you have friends who are, in this space, definitely check it out. Thanks so much. I think there's a lot of feedback that is coming in the chat section for you, Rajan. So thanks once again, guys, and hope to see you all in the next session.
Thanks, Suhas, once again
Thanks,
for
Rajan.
having me.